Good evening once again to our audience in the UK and around the world, and welcome back to our series entitled Spiritual Zone, where we are covering the primary character traits from a mystical Jewish perspective. Again, it is our pleasure to have with us again, all the way from New York, virtually, of course, Rabbi Manis Friedman, acclaimed author, social philosopher, and public speaker, and someone who many audiences around the world, including our own, are becoming more and more familiar with. Obviously, against the backdrop and the current climate, people are listening more carefully to much of what he has to say and to share. And obviously, he's been doing this, sharing his ideas on these and similar subjects for, I would say, Rabbi, close to 50 years. Am I in the ballpark there?
Yeah, close to 50 because it's been almost 60.
Okay. So there you are. As it says, there is no wise person like a person who's had experience in teaching, in sharing with people literally from all around the world. Our subject tonight is overcoming depression, lethargy, melancholy, sadness, etc. And before we begin, or I think we should start with trying to clear up a little those words, the terminology that we will be using tonight. So what does the word depression mean? What does melancholy mean? What does sad mean? Please help us understand the words.
The word depression has been overused. It's used carelessly. And anytime a person feels bad, negative, we call it depression. And it may not be. I don't know, everybody has a bad mood once in a while. Are they temporarily depressed? Depression for a day? No, depression is a serious condition, which needs to be treated very seriously. And not every bad mood, not every negative attitude means you're depressed. So, for example, lethargy is more of a physical depletion. I just don't have the energy, so leave me alone. That's not depression. Then there's emotional lethargy, the emotional depletion. I've used up my energy for the month, my emotional energy, and I don't want to feel more emotions because I don't have it. Like after a great excitement that used a lot of emotional energy, and now you're depleted. You got to wait for it to build back up, to recuperate. You'll have your energy back, and then you'll be able to feel again. So according to Hasidus, the word sadness is not depression. It's an attitude. It's a perception of life or of yourself, which shuts you off to all emotions, including grief. So sadness is best described as absence of feeling. So technically, it would be incorrect to say, I feel sad. That's an oxymoron. Sad means no feelings. So don't tell me you feel sad. When you feel nothing, you are sad. And that is sad. So sadness means indisposed to emotions. Happy would then mean, again, not a feeling in itself, I feel happy. No, you feel energy. You feel open to emotions. So what are you going to feel? Well, it depends. Is this a wedding or a funeral? If it's a wedding, I'll feel joy. If it's a funeral, I'll feel pain. I'm willing to feel whatever feeling is appropriate to the circumstances. But happiness itself is not its own feeling. Because you can be happy about things. But the state of happiness means willing to feel, maybe even eager to feel. So a happy person will cry more deeply, be more heartbroken when that's what's called for. Excuse me.
Bless you.
That means it's true, right? A sad person will not grieve properly because to grieve demands emotional energy, and he doesn't have it. Now, there are people who, by their very nature and temperament, burn up emotional energy very quickly. Those are the people who are always the life of the party. They shine brightly, but they use up their energy quickly. It's like a very intense flashlight that burns out the batteries quickly. These people are the life of the party. What happens to them when they go home? They're depleted. They just need to retreat into their own little cocoon. They can't talk to anybody. They can't deal with anything. They can't take a phone call. They need to recover because they burned up all their resources. Those are like the phosphorus at the tip of a match. It goes off very brightly and shines very brightly, but then it burns itself out. Then there are people who are slow burners. They're not the life of the party. They're okay. They hardly ever need to retreat and go into their cocoon and recover because they never really burn themselves out. So high energy people will have times when they need to be alone. That's not depressed. You can mistake it for depression. You might even say that they're bipolar. I mean, they were so high energy a minute ago. Oh, this is bipolar. Yeah, this is extreme mood swings. But it's not a mood swing. It's an energy level. So for those people, it's perfectly natural and perfectly healthy to burn brightly and then hide away for a while until they recover. They don't need medication. And they shouldn't be concerned about their mental health. They're fine. So sadness in Hasidus is treated as unholy. It's not a sin, but it's very unholy. Why? Because without emotional energy, it's a lifelessness. And lifeless is unholy. There's nothing so unholy as a dead body. So it's to be avoided at all costs. One should never justify sadness because it's lifeless. Grief, on the other hand, or profound regret, heartbreak, these are healthy because they're very much alive. They're so alive, they're so intense, it actually hurts. It hurts to feel that much energy, that much emotion. Sometimes you need to cry because the body cannot contain that intensity. So there's the escape valve, the safety valve. It comes out through your tears. Otherwise, you would blow a fuse. So grief and sadness are opposites. When you're sad, all you want to do is sleep. When you're grieving, you can't fall asleep. There's too much going on to be able to fall asleep. In sadness, there's nothing going on, so all you want to do is sleep. Very different, right? Now, what would be the cause or the source of sadness or depression? There's the immediate source and there's the original source. Like the difference between the root and the source. The source is the active cause, the immediate cause. You're sad because your friend left. You lost your best friend. You're sad because you can't pay your bills. You're sad because your father doesn't approve of you. So we know that's the cause. But where does that come from? There are some people whose fathers don't approve of them and they couldn't care less. There are some people who can't pay their bills and they laugh about it. Their best friend left. Okay, we'll find a new friend. So what is the cause of the cause? Why are these issues creating sadness or depression in one person, but not in another? The ultimate origins of most of our emotions is the ego. The person who says, my best friend just quit on me, and laughs about it, their ego is not bruised. Yeah, they're sad that they lost their friend, but they're not taking it as a personal rejection or personal failure. Yeah, I thought he was my friend. I guess not. Okay. The person whose ego is bruised is going to be much more devastated. How could he do this to me? That's a bruised ego, not just the loss of a friend.
Can I just interject for a moment? And just on that point, is this related to another term we use a lot, and that is a healthy self-esteem or a low self-esteem, which allows a person to deal with difficulty in a more healthier way?
It is related, but not the way most people think. Healthy self-esteem or unhealthy self-esteem are both problems because self-esteem is a problem. Whether you have a lot of it or a little of it, it's a problem. Let's say someone has a very healthy, high self-esteem, and his best friend turns out to be his enemy. He's not going to get depressed and he's not going to be sad. Why? Who needs him anyway? That's not healthy. That's not nice. In other words, is self-esteem and superiority complex pretty much the same thing? Oh, superiority complex is a disturbed person. But if you call it self-esteem, oh, that's a mensch. So we have to be careful about that. The self is the problem. High or low doesn't really make that much of a difference. I think very highly of myself. I think very negatively of myself. It's the same problem. Why are you thinking about yourself? So there's a famous story in Hasidic history about a man who had not been a Hasid. He had been very pious, a great scholar, took himself very seriously, but he wasn't a Hasid. He became a Hasid. And he records in his diary the thoughts that he used to have, the attitudes that he used. before he started to study Hasidus. And he was so embarrassed by the memory. For example, he says, before I studied Hasidus, I came to shul one Shabbos, and it was the parsha that we read where it says that Moshe was the most humble person on the face of the earth. When I heard that, it disturbed me terribly. Because how could God have forgotten about me? So how can it be that Moshe was the most humble person in the world when I'm the most humble? And surely God knew then that I would eventually be born and that I would be a greater Anov and I would be more humble than Moshe. So what happened here? How did God make that mistake? So he started to reason that the heavenly courts ruled that Moshe was the most humble person in the world, but God knows that I'm the most humble. And what makes me the most humble, more humble than Moshe? Well, look at the facts. Moshe's wife knew that he was great. My wife has no idea. So I have been able to conceal my greatness even from my wife. She thinks I'm an idiot. See how humble I am? Anyway, so he remembers thinking this, and it embarrasses him so badly, the insanity of that thinking, right? Now, most people will assume that what he finds so embarrassing is that he thought he was humble when he's not. The self-delusion, how he can spin his arrogance into humility and call it, but that's not really what was so embarrassing. Most people don't have an honest assessment of themselves. It's very hard to be objective about yourself. So fine, with him it was a little extreme. That's not what needed fixing. He would discover sooner or later that he's not as humble as he thinks. Reality will catch up to him. What was so embarrassing is the habit of always turning every conversation and every statement and every thought about yourself. He came into the synagogue. They're reading about Moshe. There was this guy named Moshe. He was very humble. We're talking about him. And your mind immediately goes to yourself. Moshe was the most humble person in the world. You're not interested? You don't want to know how humble he was? You don't want to know why he was humble? You don't want to know how it showed? No. Enough about him. What about me? That's the most embarrassing part of it. You may be more humble than Moshe. We'll talk about you next week. This week, we're talking about Moshe. Can you focus? So what if you are more humble? Well, we're not talking about you. But in your mind, every conversation is about you. That's what changed when he became a chassid. Not every conversation is about me. Not every song is about me. So it's not high self-esteem, low self-esteem. Why are we talking about me all the time? Can we talk about Moshe for a while? So this habit of constant self-awareness. Moshe was great. Well, what about me? You're hungry? What about me? You're upset? Well, I'm not. Why can't you ever focus on something other than yourself for more than 5 minutes? That me monster, that's what causes depression. If you can't laugh at yourself, you're already a little depressed. If you're hyper-focused on yourself, there is no happiness. There may be arrogance, but there's no happiness. Happiness comes from being free of the me monster. If I could enjoy something without introducing my ego into the activity, that will be a joyous activity. Now, there's this wisdom thought. I don't remember exactly how it goes. Sing like nobody is listening, dance like nobody's watching. If you sing like nobody's listening, you're a happy singer. You get the pleasure of the song. But if you sing like somebody is listening, that self-consciousness takes the joy out of it. Now it's stressful. If you dance like nobody's watching, then you really express joy. As soon as you become conscious that somebody's watching, all of a sudden the joy is gone, and now it's a performance. Now you're anxious. What do they think of my dancing? Are they laughing? Do I look ridiculous doing this? And all of a sudden you can't dance. You get stiff. So it's not whether somebody is watching. It's whether you're self-conscious. It's very sad, but a person can be self-conscious even when nobody's watching. It's a curse. So what causes depression? I take myself too seriously. Now, when I take myself seriously, does that mean I think highly of myself, or it doesn't matter? When you take yourself seriously, you will either think higher of yourself than is justified, or you will think more lowly of yourself than is justified. But what they all have in common, it's about you. The happiest moments in an adult's life is when he can act childlike. The last time you were really happy is when you were 6, because you weren't self-conscious. The curse of self-consciousness comes with adolescence, and it's a curse. Hasidus teaches us how to rise above it, how not to get stuck in the self-awareness. How? By identifying with something higher.
Rabbi Friedman, if I can just stop you there. I'm listening very carefully, as I'm sure the audience is too. You use a word, 2 terms interchangeably, self-awareness and self-conscious. Are they the same? Are they exactly the same, or is there a difference between the two? And where I'm going with the question is that surely there must be some value in knowing how you feel, in being self-aware. So you just know where you're holding, and if you're heading in the right direction, and how you can improve yourself emotionally if need be.
Very good point. Is there a healthy self-awareness that is not self-conscious? What does self-possessed mean? Negative or positive? A person should be self-possessed? I think so, right? Doesn't self-possessed mean in control of your thinking, emotions, behavior? That's certainly a positive thing. Self-possessed, not self-obsessed. A person should know himself. Know thyself. Very important. But why? Why? Who cares? It's a little off-putting. It's a little distasteful when people have this habit of saying, I'm the kind of person, I'm the type who does, you don't know what type you are. In fact, I'm listening to you and I can't believe you're saying it. Like the person who says, I have a very good sense of humor. Just right now, I'm in a bad mood. You don't have a good sense of humor. What makes you think you have a good sense of humor? A person who says, I'm not the type to get upset at little things. Oh, you're not the type? Don't make such ridiculous statements. But it would be good for a person to really know themselves, but not for emotional, personal, subjective reasons. You should know yourself so that you can be more productive, so that you can be more helpful to others, not for your own morbid curiosity. It's like, you want people to like you? You should, but not because you're desperate. Don't make it so personal that it becomes a dead weight that will eventually depress you because it's too heavy to carry around. So, because we are intelligent, not because we're emotionally needy, because we're intelligent, we like to know. I like to know who you are. I like to know who I am. I like to know what I should be. I like to know what I can't be because of intelligence, not because of emotions. People who are self-conscious are suffering. It's a heaviness. People who are self-aware, meaning every conversation is probably about me, uh, every conversation others are having, they're probably talking about me, either how great I am or how terrible I am. But it always is about me. That's also a heaviness. That's not an intelligent desire to know yourself. So, yes, there is a healthy self-knowledge, but it's knowledge, it's objective. That's the kind of person who can say, oh, don't ask me. You can't rely on me. I'm not good at that. Whatever the subject is. Oh, don't ask me about business. I have no head for it. And I'm not depressed. Don't pity me. I'm okay. I'm just not good at business. And I know it. So there is a healthy understanding of self. But self-aware constantly is draining. And it leads to depression. So if I am the subject all the time, it's depression. It's a depression. I can't relax about myself. So it may be a mild depression, a functional depression, but it's a depression. The me is too heavy for me. And that's why we have this mitzvah to believe in God, to get to know God, to love your fellow Jew, to do kindness. These are all necessary options to keep me away from myself. Just like you have to wean a baby off nursing, off the mother, you have to wean yourself off yourself. Because if you can't, you remain childish. So growing up, maturing means enough about me. Aren't there more interesting things in the world to talk about?
So, in other words, if I can just summarize, to the degree that I'm not the end game or that I'm not the center of gravity, I will be more happy, less sad. Is that synonymous?
Yes, it is. It really is. So I have this yearly event for teenagers, teenage girls, where we have 40 or 50 teenagers in the room, and I'm supposed to teach them something. And I would.
Something they don't know. Something they don't know already, right?
And I would teach them if I could just get their attention. The energy in the room is out of control. They're all talking at the same time, which makes you wonder, who are they talking to? So
it sounds like social media.
That it is the result of social media. Because when you're texting, you don't have to be listening. So everybody texts at the same time and nobody's listening. But I start every session. It's a 3-week session. I start every session with the following. You are a very damaged human being. You have so many issues. You have so many emotional problems. And you're really not good at so much. Okay, we got that out of the way. Now can we talk? In other words, let's make a healthy assumption. I am so messed up. Yeah, my mother messed me up. My friends messed me up. Everything messes me up. There's no one alive today who is not messed up. Now, let's talk about something else. It is the healthiest, most, disarming or relaxing admission that allows you to move on to another subject. I know, you've been molested, you've been tortured, you've been abused, you've been neglected. I know. Want to learn something? Can we talk about anything else? It's a very healthy attitude. It's another thing. Any fault that exists in the world, I have. Let's get that out of the way. I am not going to defend myself or protect myself because anything you can accuse me of, I am guilty of. There's no point in denying it. You call me a liar. Mm-hmm. I have been known to lie. Just right now, the lie you're accusing me of is not true. Now I'm telling you the truth. But you already know I'm a liar, so why would you trust me? Anybody who said, I'm not a liar. Liar. As your first lie. Well, you've never lied. Come on. So you may be right. In this occasion, you were telling the truth. But that doesn't mean you're not a liar. You're a liar. Somebody says, you're so selfish. Me? Yes. Why, you're not selfish? What are you saying? You're so jealous. You're so petty. You're so unreliable. You're so arrogant. You're so lazy. Tell me you're not guilty of all of those things? Well, not as much as you. I'm not, I'm not as lazy as you. But to say I'm not lazy, that's so foolish. You know, Rabbi Tversky,
Yeah.
the psychiatrist,
Mm-hmm.
the therapist. There's a famous story about him. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. He went to school to study psychology. Now, one of the things you have to do, at least back then in school, you have to go to therapy to discover your own hidden, buried traumas and dysfunctions before you can help anybody else. So every student had to go for therapy. Well, he couldn't afford it. He couldn't pay for the therapist, so he didn't go. When it came to the graduation, and of course, he probably knew it better than anybody else in the class. But the professor asked him, "Who did you go to therapy for?" He said, "I didn't go." He said, "But what do you mean? You're supposed to go. You have to go." He says, "I don't have to." And the professor said, "What does that mean?" He says, "I am an Orthodox Jew, and I believe that every word in Torah is true and eternal. So I don't need it." And he explained it like this. He says, "I'm supposed to go to therapy to find all my repressed emotions and impulses. I don't have any because I read the Torah and I took it seriously. So I read in the Torah where God is saying to me today, do not murder." And at first I was a little shocked, like, why? Do I look the type? Why are you telling me not to murder? What do you think I am? And I realized I must have a deep subconscious anger that would allow me to kill if it just got out. So now I know I have a repressed urge to kill. So I read a little further, and God says, "Do not eat creepy, crawly things, bugs, and stuff like that." So what? Why would I eat that stuff? Why do you have to tell me not to do that? And I realized I must have a repressed desire to eat cockroaches. Chocolate covered, of course. I read a little further, and God says to me, "Do not lie with a man as with a woman." I said, "What is it about me that makes you think that I would?" Oh, I must have a repressed subconscious homosexual tendency. Anyway, by the time I finished reading the Torah, no more surprises. I know I'm jealous, I'm lazy, I worship other gods, I'm disloyal, I know. And it's for free. So the healthiest attitude is every human being is human. Can we go on from there? Well, how human am I? Whatever. You're lazy, you're petty, you're arrogant, and you're jealous. Really? When am I jealous? Oh, stop it. Let's talk about something else. Let it rest. That is a healthy self image. Not high, not low. Healthy. What's healthy about it? You're bored. You're bored with the subject. That's a healthy self. Am I lazy? Yeah, I guess. Why are we talking about that? Am I stupid? Oh, but why do you want to talk about my stupidity? What's the difference? that's a healthy person.
I guess on a minor point, a lot of us are quite stressed in our lives because we're pretentious. All of us are pretentious in different ways to different people, and it's a lot of pressure to try and pretend to be something that we're not. But once we're told and we accept that we've got all these problems and we're all human, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about, I guess it's very relieving. And so,
Pretentious. Yeah. You Englishmen always come up with the right word. Pretentious. That's okay. So let's say I have many bills to pay. My credit cards are maxed out, and I don't know how I'm going to pay it. Doesn't that justify a little depression on my part? Did I not earn a good depression? Got myself into so much debt like an idiot? See, but this is I have bills to pay. I have debts. I'm a responsible human being. If I have a debt, I want to pay it. I must pay it. I must find a way to pay the debt. Why is that depressing? If I get depressed, I'll never find a way to pay the debt. So do I really want to pay it or not pay it? If I really want to pay my debts, I can't afford to be depressed. So why do I become depressed? Not because of the debt. It's because what's going to happen to me? Why did I get myself into this problem? Why me? Why does it always happen to me? Everything bad happens to me. That's the depression. And you're not going to pay those bills. You're too busy defending your ego. So the question, why me, is already a little bit of a depression. In the famous story of Tevye the Milchike,
yeah,
the original story by Shalom Aleichem, that Fiddler on the Roof is based on. So Tevye from Anatevka, in the full story, not in the movie, in the full original Yiddish story, of course, suffered from the Cossacks. At the end of the story, the Cossacks overrun the city. And he's thinking out loud, Tevye. And he says to God, what did I do? I've tried to be a good person. I behaved myself as best as I could. Why is everybody hating me? Why am I being persecuted? But characteristically, Tevye says, on the other hand, right? He's always like, but on the other hand, it's no shame to be poor, but it's no great honor either. So why am I suffering? What did I do wrong? On the other hand, what am I, the only one suffering? The Jewish people are suffering, so I'll suffer with them. See, that kind of thinking is the healthiest. I'm suffering? What, anti-Semitism was invented against me? It's not about me. Take it personally. There's a problem and I got to handle it. Why me? There is no why me. It's not about you. Don't make it about you and you won't get depressed. So nobody gets depressed because they have bills. Nobody gets depressed because of their pain. You get depressed when you're tortured by the question of why me? Why do I have to be in pain? Why is God angry at me? Why does he hate me? Why is he doing this to me? If we can get past that, we can handle almost anything. I wonder if that's kind of closely related to Viktor Frankl's observation that people in a concentration camp who found meaning were able to survive, when those who could not find meaning could not survive. Let's say that in somewhat different terms. Those who took it personally did not survive. Those who saw it as an issue in the world survived. The world has gone crazy. What do I need to do? Everyone is out to get me. What can I do? It's very different. So it's the me monster that really puts us at risk. Without that ego, without that self-absorption, we probably would probably never get sick. The first breach in a person's health, assuming he was born healthy, which is a big assumption. But the Rambam says, if you follow my advice and my diet, you will never get sick, unless you were born sick, which is almost everybody.
Or unless you didn't behave according to my advice before I met you.
And you cause too much damage. Okay. But here's the point. It is, in theory, it is absolutely true. Without my ego, I would never get sick. Because sickness is an imbalance. Where does imbalance begin? How do you go from being healthy to suddenly sick? You were invaded by bacteria. I wasn't invaded yesterday. Why am I invaded today? What makes me vulnerable to illness? Any illness? My ego. When I start to worry about myself, to fret about my success, my failure, who loves me, who hates me, I create an imbalance. And that imbalance opens me up makes me vulnerable. There's a school of thought in medicine trying to figure out, how did the first person become sick? Right? We have to assume people were healthy and then illness came. How? Or even according to Torah, Halikim osa es ha'odam yashar. God creates everybody healthy. Where did we get the illnesses from? So we know that Yaakov actually asked God for the aging process so that people wouldn't die suddenly. So you could, get your affairs in order. You can wrap up loose ends. You can say goodbye to your family. But the way it was before Yaakov, people would be perfectly healthy until the minute they died. So he actually asked God, give us a little downtime that tells us that we're coming to the end. But this theory among doctors is like this. A person is perfectly healthy. Healthy body, healthy mind, healthy heart, everything's healthy. What disturbs that? Not bacteria. You're immune to bacteria when you're healthy. Say, well, he caught a cold. He caught a cold. Come on, that's not wisdom. So the theory goes like this. The first person to get ill is a man who was attracted to another man's wife. This is purely medical, not moral. You're attracted to another man's wife. You've created an imbalance. In other words, how do you disturb your health? With your freedom of choice. That's where things can go right or wrong. Your body just knows how to be healthy. It doesn't know anything else. So if it's created healthy, it'll stay healthy. The only agent within you that can change something is your freedom of choice. So if you make the wrong choice, you introduce illness. Of course, the same is true if you start to pay attention to another person's donkey, thinking, how can I make that donkey mine? So do not covet your neighbor's wife, your neighbor's donkey, your neighbor's house. Don't covet. That's where all illness begins. Taking a peek over the fence to see if the grass is greener on that side, that's the beginning of illness. There's a lot of truth to that. Like, who is happy? Person who's content with his lot. Oh, he's not just happy, he's healthy. You're not interested in somebody else's donkey, somebody else's house, somebody else's wife, or whether the grass is greener. You're a healthy person. You're in balance. When you start thinking, why don't I have that? Why can't that be mine? Now you're creating a disturbance. And that can turn into every kind of illness. So the more out of line our thinking, our desires, our worries, the more out of line our freedom of choice becomes, the more dangerously ill we become. So the first person to look at another man's wife only developed a skin condition, nothing dangerous. Because the disturbance was superficial, so the illness was superficial. Leprosy. First illness was leprosy. Just a skin condition. But as people continued to become more and more unbalanced in their desires and their schemes, in their me monster appetite, the more intense that became, the more serious the illness became. So the theory is that after skin conditions, human susceptibility now included joint problems, arthritis. Also not fatal, but certainly more painful. From the joints, as people became more unbalanced, the illnesses went to more vital organs, and you developed tuberculosis. From the lung, it went to the heart. And from the heart, it went to the brain. That pretty much covers all of our illnesses. And of course, the more vital the organ, the more dangerous the illness. As the Gemara says, any pain but not head pain.
So let's go back to the me monster, as you put it, and the focus of the self as the end game or the center of gravity. Obviously, that's a more difficult line to not cross, because after all, we have one of the most powerful instincts, natural instincts, is self-preservation. And therefore, we're inclined to, use ourselves as the reference point. So when you mentioned before, well, focus on the problem in paying the bills and solving the problem, but not on yourself, it's difficult to separate the two, as you so clinically have done on a theoretical level. How do you advise people in terms of an approach or a way of thinking to more easily separate one from the other?
I think it's written in every word of the Torah and in every text of Jewish liturgy. It's not about you. Don't allow yourself to buy into this assumption that it's all about me. How do we know that it's not all about me? History is full of records of people who gave up their lives for a cause. What does that tell us? We think we claim the survival instinct is the deepest instinct in the human being. No, it's not. No, it's not by far. There are people who will give up their lives for the silliest things. Bungee jumping. Tell me where the survival instinct is. It's almost like risking your life is more exciting than living. So certainly the more significant things. People die for their country. People die for their family. People die for their beliefs, religious beliefs. People die to make money. They take dangerous jobs because it pays better. So what? I might die, but I'm making money. So this assumption or this argument that the survival instinct is the strongest instinct, no, it's not. And what the good news is, at this particular stage in history, our survival instinct has pretty much disappeared. Because, I mean, first of all, people committing suicide with no justification, wealthy people, affluent people, popular, famous, are committing suicide. What in the world is that? Children are saying, I didn't ask to be born, so what do I care? There's an indifference to our own survival that I don't think has ever been there before. You tell students, teenagers, don't mess with drugs, don't go there, run away, it'll kill you. That makes no impression. Yeah, it'll kill me, so what's your point? So, you want to die? I want to die, but I want to have a good time. If it kills me, that's okay. There is, in fact, more to us than our survival. Because I can choose to survive or not, depending on what the issue is. So where is that me that has that option? The me that is bigger than me. The me that laugh at me. We haven't explored that part of us. We got stuck in the psychology that is basically the study of self-preservation. But what about the part of us that doesn't need to survive? the really impressive part of us that has the freedom to choose survival or not. That is the fascinating part of ourselves, and that's what's coming out in these days. Literally, the cutting edge recent developments. People will not be threatened by death because our existence is not the end of the conversation. In fact, I don't even know why I exist. Why am I here? I didn't ask to be born. So now, instead of taking our existence for granted and defending it at all costs, we're questioning it. And it's not depression, it's wisdom. I don't need to be here. I don't need to survive. I don't. Oh, you sound depressed. I'm not depressed. I'm just clear minded. I'm looking at reality objectively. Do I need to be here? I don't need to be here.
Not for myself anyway.
Exactly. That's the good news. The good news is if I don't need to be here, then whose need got me here? Now we're talking. Now we're coming around the home stretch. This is leading to some good conclusions. The opposite of depression.
So you're saying, in other words, that perhaps these very disruptive times are challenging us to make that transition from a more selfish state to perhaps a more selfless way of living.
And selfless means beyond the survival instinct. So in the olden days, people martyred themselves. They died for the cause. That's coming from a place within themselves, greater, higher, and more powerful than the survival instinct. Today, we don't have to martyr ourselves. We just have to sit back and think, do I need this? I don't need this. And so you can't threaten me. The threat is gone. Oh, you want to die? Don't threaten me. Tell me what is the purpose of my life. Don't threaten to kill me. It's not going to work anymore.
Rabbi Friedman, thank you very much once again for those wonderful, insightful, challenging ideas. Again, people have more time to think now, and we're certainly open to new ideas since the old ones haven't worked that well. On a parting note,
we don't want to go back to them.
On a parting note, can you please leave our viewers with any practical tips to help us focus more on something greater than ourselves and less so on self-preservation?
In very simplistic terms, if you're depressed about something, if you're very conscious of your failings, your inabilities, your handicaps, your flaws, make peace with it. Yes, you are. You are everything you're afraid you might be. So what? God created miserably insignificant, tiny creatures. That's how we're created. Maybe you made it a little worse by some mistakes, but that's what we are. And God said to us, You miserable, insignificant, devastated, broken creatures. Want to do something really perfect? Here's a mitzvah. It's perfect. It's eternal. It's forever. It's what I need. I've always needed, and I will always need. And you can do this for me, you insignificant little creatures. That's it. That's Judaism. Judaism is imperfect people doing perfect things, insignificant creatures doing the most significant things. So, welcome to the club. You are devastated, you're damaged beyond repair, you're everything you're afraid you are. But you can do incredibly important things. So, what are you going to do? Sit and worry about how damaged you are? That's not unique to you. We're all damaged. We're all tiny. We're all insignificant. We're all vulnerable. And we're all in pain. And we are all necessary for God's divine, awesome plan. So come on. Where do you want to put your energies?
And that is certainly, to sum it all up, the best advice: to move away from a state of sadness or depression to a state of happiness and joy, I guess. So it all comes around at the end.